Hello everyone, it's Julian. Today, we're going to make one of the most important videos of my container house adventure, since it's been a year now that I've been living here. And so I can finally tell you if a container house can really be well insulated. Because between the thermal bridges, the steel walls, all of that, many of you told me in the comments that I was going to have insulation problems, and that really worried you a lot. Professionals came to inspect my house at the end of the construction and perform an energy performance diagnosis. The famous Diagnostic Performance Energetique rating that you have for all houses in France, this Diagnostic Performance Energetique rating, it judges the insulation of my house. But in addition, I also brought in other professionals who tested the tightness and, above all, who did a test under real conditions of the house's insulation. It's a test that no one can do in France right now. It's new, it just came out, and I was lucky enough to be able to do it a bit in advance, to test much more precisely than the Diagnostic Performance Energetique, the actual insulation of my container house. And you will see that between the theory of the Diagnostic Performance Energetique and the practical tests that were carried out in my house, there is a nice difference anyway. And I think all the results we're going to analyze today will be very interesting. No matter what type of house you want to build, whether it's from a container or something else, we're dealing with quite unprecedented results in France. Usually we don't get this when we have our house analyzed. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Julian and this is my house, container. I'm 26 years old, have no knowledge of do-it-yourself, but I've taken on the crazy challenge of building an eco-friendly and affordable house. I'm also trying to develop my resilience and live in harmony with nature. I'm documenting this journey on my channel. Subscribe to follow along. It all started before I applied for the building permit. I had to go through a thermal studies office which calculated the necessary insulation so that my house respects the thermal regulation of 2012, the ERTE 2012, which has now been replaced by the environmental regulation of 2020, the famous RE 2020. Good to know. When you apply for a building permit at the town hall, you must necessarily provide a BBIO certificate, which is precisely issued by the thermal studies office. I went through the company Evergreen, we discussed my project, and we agreed that I had to put 10 centimeters of polyurethane on the floor, 24 centimeters of wood wool on the walls, and 55 centimeters of cellulose wood on the roof. By the way, we planned much more insulation than what was planned in RT 2012. We almost put what is recommended in RE 2020. Evergreen also advised me on the joinery, to install the windows, the doors, on the heating systems for my house, for my water, my ventilation mécanique contrôlée. They also considered all the thermal bridges in a comprehensive thermal study. Not long ago, I finished my construction site. So a professional came to my house to check if I had properly installed the systems that were planned in the thermal study. Well, to check the amount of insulation I had put in my walls that he couldn't really verify concretely. So I just had to provide him with all my invoices, which served to justify the amount of insulation I had put in. All the verification has been done, and now I just received my Diagnostic Performance Energetic note. And to better understand what it means, I went to see Simon Thibault, who is an engineer and a member of the SEREIN project. A project that aims to precisely measure the actual energy performance of buildings. I wanted us to discuss my thermal study a bit because I received my Diagnostic Performance Energetique rating, so my Diagnostic Performance Energetique rating, and I am Diagnostic Performance Energetique A, so I'm quite happy.
With 40 kilowatt hours per square meter per year, we are well below the 70 required for an A rating. We are on a good A. And I also note that in terms of CO2 emissions, we are also in A.
Okay, and that's good.
The data shows that you emit 335 pounds of CO2 annually, equivalent to 785 kilometers by car.
And are these fairly reliable figures, or is it still very theoretical?
It's still theoretical, as it assumes you've implemented the insulation planned in the thermal study. Except that it can happen that this is not the case if you manage your thermal bridges poorly, if you compress your insulator a little too much, if it's wet, if you stored it under the rain. It can impact the overall losses. And we are a research team that has measured dozens of houses across the territory. And we have observed underperformance on the order of 40% in terms of insulation.
That is to say, the houses that you went to analyze, they had 40% more loss on average than the theory.
Yes, that's it. Not all. There are some. It matched well, but others, we had big overlosses and even most okay. But what's the cause of that? Possible reasons include poorly jointed or rain-exposed insulators, as mentioned earlier. Thermal bridges, indeed poorly managed, air infiltration from walls where we forgot to insulate. These are things that are found on the field sometimes.
Okay, so that means that if I didn't manage the thermal bridges of my house well, or when I insulated my roof or my walls, it was raining and it wet the insulator. There's a chance that I'm not at all A. There's a chance that I'm not at all A. In fact, in reality, I might be 50% worse than the theory.
Yes, I assure you right away. After integrating thermal bridges into the study, if poorly implemented, more thermal bridges than expected can occur.
So I would need to do a test if I wanted to make sure my A is a real A.
Absolutely. If you're interested, we can potentially measure your overall heat loss level once the construction is completed.
Okay, let me summarize. My house has an A rating energy performance certificate, which is excellent. In theory, I'm well insulated. However, in practice, if I've installed my insulation poorly, or if it has gotten wet due to a damaged weather barrier, the insulation may not be effective. If water has gotten through, you saw that in my cladding video, it could have degraded the insulation. Or if I've poorly managed all the thermal bridges in my house. As you always say in the video comments, I will always have an energy performance certificate, a rating, because it's theoretical, but in practice I could rather be B, 100, 500, or even worse. To compare theory and practice, I could already look at my energy performance certificate report and see that they estimate I should consume between 350 euros and 520 euros of electricity per year with my house. If I compare that to my EDF bills in 2024, I had to pay 700 euros for electricity. So that means I consume more than they had predicted, and that scares me a bit. But you will see that these diagnostic performance energetic estimates don't actually mean much. The first reason is that these estimates, they are. In the case where I do not heat to more than 19 degrees in winter, and in the case where in summer, I do not use my air conditioning. I confess that I haven't truly adhered to these suggestions. Secondly, throughout 2024, I had solar panels in my garden that generated a portion of my electricity. So, really, the analysis of the bills compared to the estimates are not at all relevant. But above all, what greatly increased my electricity bill in 2024? It's that I was learning to live in this house. I was learning to use my water heater and towel dryer. I'm discussing my towel dryer because I set it up incorrectly, causing it to consume 100 of electricity over 2 months without my knowledge. Same thing with my heat pump. I didn't necessarily turn it off properly when I left my house, so I managed it poorly. I think in 2025, I will consume much less. In short, you will have understood, comparing my EDF bills to the theoretical estimate that was made in the diagnostic performance energetic, it's really not relevant. What should be done is rather come and test with tools in real conditions, the energy performance of my house. This test, it should be done in 2 steps. First, a test of the tightness and then a test of the insulation. Today, the only test that is legally mandatory is the tightness test, and so I suggest we start with that. For the tightness test, a professional came to my house and installed a large fan in place of my front door. The goal is to suck the air out of the house, which then allows us to see all the infiltrations. The test lasts a little less than an hour, and that was enough for the technicians to find a few. In his report, he took pictures and showed me all the places where I had air passing through. Nothing very serious. I can plug the 2 or 3 infiltrations quite easily, but it still freaks me out a bit about the test results.
We are rather very good in the sense that basically, what we are trying to measure, to extract from the measurement, is what we call the Q4. So it's the flow rate at 4 Pascal here. So here we have about 45 cubic meters per hour, which gives us a Q4 ratio related to the ATBAT of the house, so to the heat loss surfaces of the house, so inside on the outside, a Q4 at 0.21. Knowing that for comparison, on a single family home, RT 2012 or RO 2020, we're on a Q4, which should peak at 0.6. So here we are roughly 3 times better than what we would have on a house, let's say classic. In any case, compared to a regulatory criterion, we are closer to a goal that we could have a passive. So overall, it's a good result, and that translates into good implementation, I would say, of the whole, the coherence of the whole. I like everything you're telling me. I take that as a compliment.
Now, we will technically look for where the 0.21 leak would be located. We will
search for minor leaks that may be present, considering the very low rates in this location. In other words, the leaks we will find here will be quite minimal. So overall, the idea is to go a little bit in all the rooms of the house to check already the points, let's say classic leakage points, the classic points. It's going to be everything that's going to cross this wall. Electricity, plumbing, for example. It can also be, after all, the connections between the lining and the joinery, all these points. It's, let's say, the sensitive focus points that we're going to look at first. Then after that, we're going to try to analyze a little more in detail to try to see if there are possibly other defects on the house. But well, since we saw that we have 0.21, we shouldn't find much. Overall, we will have small leaks, let's say quite classic. There won't necessarily be big defects that we're going to spot. Knowing that all this test was carried out by blocking everything that is entry
of voluntary air.
There you go, voluntary. So the system here, in this case, the ventilation system. In reality, the house is not completely airtight. There is still controlled air circulation and renewal, which is the desired outcome to master and regulate.
0.2 instead of 0.6? 3 times better? I'm not incredible after all? Anyway, more seriously, we finally have concrete proof. It's a real-world test that a container house can be more airtight than a traditional house. So it's very good news. We know that there won't be any outside air bypassing my insulation and cooling down or heating up my house in the summer. It's very good news, but the less good news is that now, to test the insulation of the house. Well, there isn't really a method or offer on the market that exists to test under real conditions. We just have the theoretical diagnostic performance énergétique, which gives us an indication it's really the best we have. Fortunately, I've created many videos showing each stage of building this house. And under one of the videos, I have a subscriber, Simon, who told me I'm an engineer, and precisely I'm developing a method to test the real insulation of a building with the Serene project. And he told me, if you want, we can come and test the real insulation of your house and be able to tell your subscribers if your diagnostic performance énergétique is really realized in reality. Before conducting these tests, it's crucial to recognize the importance of having a well-insulated house, because it allows us to consume less heating and therefore reduce our electricity bill, but also to reduce our ecological impact. We minimize our impact by consuming less energy. But also, and above all, because we can install smaller heating systems and we can also install more low-tech heating systems like aerothermal solar panels, for example. That's why I, on my house, have installed 2 SunAero aerothermal panels from the Solar Browser brand to produce part of my heating in winter. We start with a small photovoltaic panel that will power a fan that draws in outside air to send it inside. We then add some very black thermal panels, which will naturally heat the air that passes inside and increase its temperature from +20 to +40 degrees. Inside, I have a thermostat that opens and closes a flap and allows me to control what I want to send into the house. Solar Browser estimates that a sound panel can bring an additional 3 to 5 degrees to a 20 square meter room. So for example, for my room here, I should have at least 3 Aero sound panels. I've only installed 2 for now, but it's not an issue since it's modular. I can begin with 1 and add more later. We can go little by little. Thanks to Solar Browser for sponsoring this video. You've been asking me for a long time to show you low-tech systems on this channel. And precisely, Solar Browser makes a lot of solar systems to heat its food, its house, to make solar dryers as well. These products may really interest you. You have all the information in the description. Having this sponsor was really cool, especially for this type of video. Well, if I summarize, waterproofing test, okay, over to you. Energy performance certificate, I got an A, I could have gotten A+, but I'm leaving myself room for improvement for the next house. But now it's time for Simon to come with all his gear to test if my A isn't just theoretical and if it holds up under real conditions. The test is quite simple. To start, in the house we install about 10 connected heaters with thermometers at the end. Then, outside we install sensors that will measure the outside temperature, but also the temperature felt by my walls and my roof. This information is sent to a central unit that will run tests by heating the house for several days and measuring concretely how much energy is used to maintain a certain temperature. Taking into account the outside weather conditions, I have given you a very simplified explanation. It's a crazy research project with insane calculations to check. But you understand, basically, they're going to heat my house and check whether the heat stays inside or whether it leaks through thermal bridges or through my insulation that might have been poorly installed. The research group that Simon is part of is actually advocating for these real-world insulation tests to become mandatory, like the air tightness tests. Because I remind you that, according to their studies, they observed that houses in France consume 40% more energy than what was predicted in the Diagnostic Performance Énergétique. So that's huge. I admit I'm a bit stressed about the result of the test they're going to do here, because if they observe that my house is much less well insulated than what the Diagnostic Performance Énergétique had predicted, I lose a bit of credibility with you. That would mean that the insulation tutorials I did on the channel, or everything I told you about thermal bridges, it was a bit false. I'm taking a big risk here, eager for the results and keeping my fingers crossed.
We've completed the serene measurement at your location. We installed the kit for 3-4 days, and in itself we could have done it in 24 hours. That would have been enough to have some uncertainty. But to be sure to be a little more precise, we stayed a little longer, and here is the overall result. So here we see that your level of insulation is overall 13% better than what was predicted in the thermal study.
So, the tests you have done on other houses are typically 40% worse on average.
Yeah, often, yeah.
I was 13% better than the theory, but how is that possible?
Yes, so it's great.
Okay, but how is that possible? I still had a lot of thermal bridges with my container. People were telling me in the comments, there are thermal bridges everywhere. How can I be better?
I noticed that they considered thermal bridges in the calculation for the thermal study. Here we see your implementation, while also paying close attention to the implementation of the insulation on the outside of the containers to avoid thermal bridges, etc. Overall, put end to end, you have a very good overall insulation performance.
So, in the end, what I talk about in my tutorials is not so crazy. At least I implemented it well.
Clearly, you've been very careful, yes.
In the end, people, when they buy a house, they get a bit scammed with the Diagnostic Performance Énergétique because they think they're buying a house A. But maybe it was poorly implemented and they have B or 100.
Yes, there could be that risk.
I could include this result with my Diagnostic Performance Énergétique when I sell the house one day. To prove that practice confirms theory,
in the long run, that's our goal. But today it's a research project, so you can't. But in the future, when there will be methods on the market that will be validated, that will be subject to a standard, well, yes, indeed, you will be able to integrate them into your Diagnostic Performance Énergétique, and it will add value to your house since it proves that it's verified. The level of insulation, we control it, and if there are additional heating consumptions. The issue is unrelated to the building itself, which is efficient. It pertains to other factors like the occupant or weather conditions.
Okay, but it's crazy that we do air tightness tests, but for insulation we don't do any tests. We take the house builder's word for it. We don't really check that the insulation is properly installed.
Yes, it's not easy to do. That's why we're on a research project. Air tightness, it took a long time to come. Verifying insulation is the same process. It's going to take time, but in the end, we hope it will be able to advance the building industry.
It's good. I finally have a video that I can send to all the big haters who leave me comments. For years I've been told your house is poorly insulated with thermal bridges everywhere. Well, they were wrong. There was a real-world test that proves that my house is airtight, well insulated, and that the thermal bridges, all of that is well managed and doesn't significantly impact. Well, I admit that I was really stressed about doing this test because it could have really proven me wrong. It could have really hurt my credibility. But that's the game. I owe you the truth on this channel. But at least now we can ensure that a container house can be well insulated, can be a building that is modest in energy consumption. In short, it can make a house worthy of the name. If this video has made you want to build a house out of a shipping container, well, that's good. We have launched support offers to help you with your shipping container projects. The goal is to support you from A to Z, from the building permit to the very end of the construction, ensuring you do everything correctly within rules and standards, saving time and money. All the information is available on mamaisonconteneur.fr, which is my recently updated domain name. Don't hesitate to check out the offers we have for you. You can even book a free call with me so we can discuss your shipping container project and see the best way to support you. If I had to rebuild a house, I think I would do it pretty much the same way. I would just maybe add a bit more insulation and a dual flow ventilation mécanique contrôlée so that my house could become passive. That is to say, an A+ energy rating. With solar panels, it would even become positive, meaning it would produce more energy than it consumes. In 2025, I really want to get out in the field. See more houses, do reports on houses that are passive and positive, precisely to inspire me, and to give you sources of inspiration for your projects. Whether it's for houses, containers, or anything else, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. I hope you found this one interesting. Thanks for watching it up to now, by the way. I'll see you very soon. Don't hesitate to leave comments to ask your questions or to add anything to what I've said in this video. Thanks also to all the speakers who intervened, so Simon, and all the professionals who came to do tests at my place. That was Julian. See you soon on the channel. Ciao.